The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Gwilda Wiyaka's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the Science of Magic or endorsed in any manner by Gwilda Wiyaka, Relmar McConnell Media Company, its affiliated networks, stations, or employees. Welcome to the Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, a program dedicated to uncovering the unified nature of reality and humanity's ever-evolving place as truly galactic beings. For more information on the Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, visit us online at www.thescienceofmagic.net.
Welcome to the Science of Magic, a place where science and magic come together to transform fact into evolving truth. We can be found on our website, www.thescienceofmagic.net. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. This hour we'll be exploring soul song. My first teacher, a Lakota medicine man, was very meditative in everything he did. It was as if his every movement was a prayer. He handled everything he touched with unhurried reverence, as if time did not exist. After watching him for several years, I suddenly realized that while he seemed totally unhurried and completely focused on what he was doing, to the exclusion of all else, he was also in sync with everything. He would calmly finish a task outside and walk into the house just as it began to rain. When he'd prepared the herbal tinctures on the stove inside, he'd walk out to place them by the lodge just as the rain stopped. He had no TV or radio to listen to the weather report, yet out of the clear blue, he would decide to split wood for me to carry into the house and stack by their wood-burning stove. Just as the task was completed, the storm would move in and snow would start to come down. After much observance, I recognized that though he moved slowly and purposefully, he accomplished much more than the average person. This, I decided, was due to his uncanny ability to be in the flow of life. Later, while obtaining my degree in psychology, I was studying about brainwaves. I reflected back on my old teacher and realized he lived in a perpetual state of theta. This gave him the ability to be in constant communication with his inner knowing and the workings of nature. He didn't use his brain to figure things out. He'd simply align his intent and purpose with the way life worked and follow his promptings. In modern-day culture, we're trained to spend most of our time in the conscious mind, noodling things out and making plans. This is done with no link to our inner knowing or connection to Source. We try to impose our plans on life and curse the rain that falls on our picnic. You know the old adage, if you want to make God laugh, just tell him your plans. In becoming so mind-centered, we've lost touch with our soul, that place where we are one with all that is. Ironically, the very things that can reconnect us to Source have been deemed unimportant and virtually eliminated from our schools. Art, music, and even cursive handwriting have almost become things of the past. We're taught to be slaves to bells, schedules, and clocks rather than our inner promptings. Children are criticized for daydreaming and instructed to stay on task. Those that cannot are often labeled ADD or ADHD and medicated. Imagination has been invalidated as a thing for children, something one grows out of. If it came from the imagination, it's considered fancy, not fact. Yet it's through our imagination that we interface with the quantum level, or spirit. When we envision something we want, we're actually building a matrix at the quantum level around the thing which the thing can manifest. Our creativity also resides in the imagination. In the absence of imagination, we have no new raw material from which to create. If we cannot imagine a thing, we cannot create it. We're left with memorizing what others have done and reproducing it. By learning to combine imagination with our will and intent, we become co-creators of reality. The reverse is also true. Spirit and divinations thereof, such as our soul, can only enter consciousness through the imagination. Our imagination, not the mind, is the access point for spiritual information. Once it's been received through the imagination, only then can spiritual information be comprehended by the mind and applied to daily life. Our soul song paints a metaphor in the imagination that, when interpreted, connects us with the knowledge and glory of all that is. So how can we return to hear our soul song? How can we reconnect to our inner guidance and creativity? Our guest this hour, Janet Conner, is the author of many fine books on the subject of connecting to and working with our internal divine guidance. She offers her readers profound yet practical tools to activate and listen to their connection to spiritual information. Her landmark book, Writing Down Your Soul, connects readers to their extraordinary voice within. The Soul Discovery Coloring Book is an amazing tool for anyone interested in entering into the inspiring world of Theta. After this short break, I'll introduce Janet, and together we'll explore the endless landscape of Theta, the power of imagination, and finding our soul song. You're listening to The Science of Magic. Prior innovative episodes can always be found on our website, www.thescienceofmagic.net. The scientist and the mystic have been on an age-old, relentless search with one thing in common. They seek truth. Their paths converge in the 40,000-year-old practice of shamanism, an ancient science delving to the quantum level of life, facilitating healing, manifestation, and evolution. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, the founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Arts School, a unique Colorado State certified occupational school training shamanic practitioners and teachers. We also provide classes for empowering personal lives through shamanism. Our certification classes are in week-long segments enabling international participation, and online classes and long-distance shamanic healing sessions are available. Come discover the science of magic in the limitless world of shamanism. www.findyourpathhome.com. Welcome back. This is The Science of Magic, dedicated to unification and evolution of consciousness. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. Our guest this hour is Janet Conner, author of many fine books, including the Soul Discovery Coloring Book and Find Your Soul's Purpose. Her website, www.janetconner.com. Janet, thank you so much for joining us on The Science of Magic.
Oh, Gwilda, it is such a joy to be here. As you were talking about your teacher and Theta, I'm just ecstatic. You're singing my song.
Well, we have to sing the same song then, don't we? Janet, how did you get involved in working with the connection to the divine guidance?
Well, it was handed to me on a silver platter. I thought, and I think a lot of people probably have a story like mine, you're going down one path in life and you're absolutely certain this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm going to be a success at. I had created the hiring program at CNN, then I was a headhunter for 11 years, and I just had this very clear knowing that I was going to be a very successful human resource consultant. And then my marriage fell apart in an extraordinarily dramatic fashion. And overnight, I had no clients, the house was disappearing, the marriage was gone, the money was going down some sort of river, and I was actually frightened for my life. So I would sit in the living room with the blinds shut and sob. Now, other people, their call to wake up could be a scary diagnosis, it could be a death in the family, it could be addiction. Mine was a frightening divorce. And one day, my puppy carried my untouched copy of The Artist's Way down the hallway to me. There is no explanation for what happened, but I knew even in this ridiculous state that I was in, I have to pay attention. And so I opened this book, The Artist's Way, and I only made it to page 15 because I only needed to make it to page 15. That's what the universe was waiting for me. Hello out there. Can you see that there's help on the way? And on page 15, Julia Cameron is talking about morning pages, and she says that when she is frightened, worried, she picks up the page because she can find a source within. I threw down her book. I picked up a pen, and for the first time in my life, I addressed the divine across the top of a page. The name I use today is Beloved Vibration of Sophia, but then I wrote, Dear God, comma. And Gwilda, something happened. Something happened. Writing in cursive, this magnificent skill that, it just sets my heart and my hands on fire when I see the children not only don't know cursive, they don't even know how to properly hold a pen or pencil.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking, isn't it?
It's heartbreaking. And it's particularly heartbreaking to me because I know that this access, this theta round open door, this access to your creativity is in your hands.
Absolutely.
But of course I didn't intellectually know any of that then. I was just frightened for my life. So I picked up a pen and I said, Dear God, comma. And nothing dramatic happened the first day, but I vented. I dumped all this pain, all this sorrow, this fear onto the page. And so the next day I showed up, Dear God, comma, and I vented and I dumped for probably 2 hours. But then, I think by the 4th, 5th, 6th day, I was so sick of my own venting that I did something different. And this was the day that round open door to the imagination, to the divine realms opened. I didn't intellectually understand that, but I can look back and see. And what I did that was different was I asked a question. I now know that questions are the magic, thinking about your magnificent title for this radio show. Questions are the magic. Questions, I see them as living beings that probe the quantum field, that probe the Akashic record, that reach out way beyond your conscious knowing. And like little hooks, they bring back, maybe it's not an accident that the question mark is a hook, they bring back exactly the information that you need in that moment. And that's what happened to me. I was writing very quickly, filled with fear and anger, and I asked a question. And bingo, on the page in front of me clearly was something that did not come from me. I knew it didn't come from me because it wasn't angry, venting, emotional chaos, right? It was wise, it was gentle, it was loving, and it was clear direction. And so for 3 years, every day I showed up and I followed little tiny baby steps, just the direction I was given, and I discovered that not only could I receive real, clear guidance, not how can we have peace on earth, but what Janet needed in that moment, but I also received the sweetest comfort. And I think I must have wanted the guidance. I think there was some part of me that said, well, if Julia Cameron says there's a source of wisdom within, well, then I could use a little wisdom. But the comfort was surprising. The comfort was this extra gift. I felt those pages were reaching around and hugging me and holding me. I also discovered protection. And we were in danger, my son and I. Not a hair of our heads was touched. There was protection. And so one day, Gwilda, I did what I think anybody would do. I said to Dear God on the page, thank you for the guidance, thank you for the comfort, thank you for the protection. Can I ask for money? And I did. I did. I mean, my back was up against the wall. Janet's money was gone. So I wrote, I don't know how you're going to do it, but I know that you are. Thank you in advance for $10,000 for the attorney. 48 hours later, I had $10,000.
That's amazing.
Now, I'm slow, but I'm not, I connected those dots. And I've shown up on the page every day of my life ever since. Everything I am, everything I write, everything flows through my hands on the page.
That's amazing. Would you mind bringing us up to snuff on brainwaves? We've got gamma, beta, alpha, theta, and delta. What do they do? Do you mind addressing that a little bit?
Well, I discovered this. I stumbled into it when I was writing the book, Writing Down Your Soul. I wanted to understand, why does this work? I mean, what's special about Janet?
What's the science behind it, right?
There had to be, but I didn't know what it was. So I probed into the psychology with Pennebaker's 30-plus years of research on the efficacy of writing. Then I probed into Candace Pert's research on the neuropeptides. Every single cell in your body is carrying emotions, and so when we're writing, we're actually freeing up our brain and getting all of these negative emotions out of us and onto the page. But there was still a missing piece, Gwilda, and I didn't know what it was. And so one day, in perfect synchronicity, I'm listening to Robert and Michelle Colt on a radio interview like this, called them, and they're the ones. I didn't know a thing about brainwaves. And he explained that when I'm receiving this guidance on the page, I'm in the theta, and when it's a pure, absolute connection, and you know that you know that you know that something so much bigger than you is flowing through you, it's mystical theta. So he's the one that explained to me that our daily awareness, like you were describing at the opening of this show, is beta, B, like boy, and it's a useless brainwave, but all of our educational systems and corporate systems keep us in beta, high stress. If you drop down into alpha, and there are many, many layers of alpha, but your brainwaves are getting a little bit slower, you can do some really good work. But you are sort of reorganizing, recompiling, collating what is already in your conscious awareness. But then, when you drop down to theta, it is the only brainwave in which you have access to breakthrough thinking, real creativity, and what I would call divine mind. You are now walking through that round open door between worlds. You're in the Akashic record. You're in the quantum field. You're in what you would call the magic. And then slower than that is delta. Go ahead.
I love the way you've described this, because as a shamanic practitioner, I've developed tools that help me adjust my brainwaves in order to access spiritual information. And I have numerous EEGs and biofeedback study done on me when I'm working. And they've consistently shown that when I enter the shamanic journey trance, it drops my alpha waves from 8 to 12 hertz to 7.5 and sometimes below. Yeah. And for me, this serves as the bridge between beta and theta. In other words, it brings the spiritual information from the subconscious mind to the conscious one. My question to you is, short of 40 years of intense shamanic training and practice, how can the average person achieve this state at will?
And that is exactly what I stumbled into. I didn't, when I was doing those 3 years of intense deep soul writing and clearly accessing something within me that was greater than me, I did not understand that I was building my theta muscle. It was Robert Colt that explained to me, because he had been out and had all of this brainwave training with Dr. James Hart at the BioCybernaut Institute in Vancouver. So he'd been in the little booth like you've been in with the little brainwave thingies on your head, and you can see, right? You know, you can see it dropping down, down, down. So it was a shock to me that Robert said, Janet, because I asked him this, Gwilda, because I didn't know anything about brainwaves. I said, Robert, because he and his wife said writing is the most effective spiritual practice because it activates all your senses. Now, I found that pretty stunning. It's like, what? Really? Oh, okay. I mean, I was activating all my senses, but I, once again, didn't really understand intellectually. And that's why I wrote the book, Writing Down Your Soul, so now everyone can do this. So it was he, when I said, well, Robert, when I'm writing really, really quickly, and the pen begins to have an energy of its own, and it moves across the page, and I really couldn't lift it if I wanted to, and something comes through that I know is not me, and there was this silence. And I was actually a little worried. It's like, uh-oh, now he thinks I'm crazy. But instead, he was just in awe. And here's what he said, Janet, I don't know how you've done it, but you have trained yourself to enter mystical theta. So now I trained everyone, and you do too. We're all training one another with our various vehicles. Shamanic is this pure, exquisite. Writing Down Your Soul is a way, and there are many other ways to access.
You know, we're going to have to take a short break, and on the return of this short break, we're going to address all those wonderful ways that you have hold of, Janet, that we can access theta. We'll return to our discussion. You are listening to The Science of Magic. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. Do you want to hear more? Previous broadcasts of innovative episodes can always be found on our website, www.thescienceofmagic.net. The scientist and the mystic have been on an age-old, relentless search with one thing in common. They seek truth. Their paths converge in the 40,000-year-old practice of shamanism, an ancient science delving to the quantum level of life, facilitating healing, manifestation, and evolution. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, the founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Arts School, a unique Colorado State-certified occupational school training shamanic practitioners and teachers. We also provide classes for empowering personal lives through shamanism. Our certification classes are in week-long segments enabling international participation, and online classes and long-distance shamanic healing sessions are available. Come discover the science of magic in the limitless world of shamanism. www.findyourpathhome.com. Welcome back. This is The Science of Magic, a place where magic and science come together to promote enlightenment. Visit us online at www.thescienceofmagic.net. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. Our guest this hour is Janet Conner, author of many fine books, including The Soul Discovery Coloring Book and Find Your Soul's Purpose. Her website, www.janetconner.com. Janet, just before the break, you were about to share with us some of the wonderful discoveries that you've come up with that can help us enter into theta.
Well, theta is the magic, and the more ways we can keep that round open door open, the better. Of course, the one everybody knows, we've all heard about, some of us have been very successful at learning it, others have struggled mightily, is meditation. This is the ancient, time-honored, Buddhist, Hindu, Christian in centering prayer, so many different ways. Call it contemplative, call it meditation. But the problem has historically been that it isn't easy to just, boom, slip, you're now deep in theta in meditation. And it can be daunting to struggle with it and to read that, it'll take 10 years, 15 years, 40 years. Now, we know it gets you into theta and mystical theta because so many people have had their charts done with those things on their head, clearly showing that they are in theta, gamma, mystical theta. But here I am, a perfectly ordinary person, sitting in my living room writing and getting there without a lot of practice, without a lot of training, without years. And so once Robert opened my mind, my awareness to theta, and there was almost like a part of me observing myself writing, I began to pay attention to what it feels like. And I was describing the pen moving, but that's just one signature, and I call it a signature, that our unique relationship with this round open door into the mystical realms, the invisible, is unique for everybody. It's a personal relationship. And people have told me, I feel something in my hand, I feel something in my heart. I notice the slant of my handwriting changing. I notice that I was born in Japan and I'll speak in English, but spirit will enter and respond in Japanese. There is a limitless. There's just a zillion ways that you know and you know that you know.
That's
but
wonderful.
You begin to notice, right? You notice, this is it. This is what it feels like. Well, then I began to notice, wait a second. This happens to me in the shower.
Yep.
My editor, my first editor, when I was telling her this amazing download I took in the shower, she giggled and said, you found the phone booth to God. Now, this phone booth, and it's because of the negative ions and the warm and the white noise and all those wonderful things. You're back in the womb when you're in the shower. I get so many downloads, Gwilda, that I had to buy paper. You can buy paper that just tagged to the wall. It's called Aquanotes. I've gotten my book titles. I've seen the covers. I mean, I get whole systems in the shower. And I love to take a shower. I take my shower in the middle of the day. So I do my deep soul writing in the morning, do a little creative work. Hey, let's take a shower, because it opens that theta door again. I noticed that when I drive, now you can't have the radio on when you're doing this, But if you're alone in the car and you know where you're going, now for heaven's sakes, don't try to do this when you have to pay attention to the directions because you will miss that exit. You'll be in Oklahoma. Going, wait a second. But when you absolutely know where you're going, it's a standard drive, standard commute, I begin to have the dialogue either out loud or in my head. I get incredible information driving in the car. There is no limit to the times. So here are just a few ways that listeners, of course meditation, of course deep soul writing, but what about soul scribbling? Pick up a pen, but with no intention of drawing anything. Just scribble or doodle. And because the connection is in your hands. It's not the only place it is. It's in your heart, it's in your feet, it's in your soul, it's in your imagination. But soul scribbling and soul doodling, and that's why all the creative prompts in the coloring book, the Soul Discovery coloring book, encourage you to do soul doodling and soul scribbling. But here's my favorite. I call it morning theta. No, I learned this from Robert Colt. Your brain waves slowly increase and slowly decrease. And so you can't lie down in bed with your brain still going punk, chunk, 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 and beta, and bingo, you're asleep in delta. Your brain has to slow down unless you screw up the system by taking drugs. And so you have a moment slipping into theta before delta as you're falling asleep, exquisite time to ask a question. Your dreams will address that question. Now, you're waking. This is my richest theta time. As you're waking, even with an alarm, but I am blessed to allow myself to wake up naturally. As you're becoming aware that you're waking, do not move, do not open your eyes, do not turn your head, lie perfectly still, and do absolutely nothing. You're not trying to remember your dreams. You're not trying to receive information. And so it takes a little training to get used to this. It probably is the meditative state. You're just open, lying perfectly still. Gwilda, I've trained myself. I stay in bed probably a minimum of 30 minutes, sometimes more. I just finished writing Find Your Soul's Purpose. Everything that happened, all the guided meditations, all of the labyrinths, everything. This is when I do my work, quote, unquote. It just is delivered to me, given to me. Every single person on the planet has access to morning theta. But what do? We set an alarm, we snap ourselves into, boo, gotta get up, and you immediately are in worry. Gotta remember, gotta do, don't forget, and you've left theta, this window into breakthrough thinking and creativity, you've left it on the pillow. And then you wonder why life isn't feeding you and nourishing you. If I could leave your listeners with one brilliant idea, it would be, don't get up. Lie in bed. But don't open your eyes. I mean, no light. Just lie there. And you're going to feel like an idiot the first week, maybe even 2 weeks. And you'll think to yourself, that woman that was on Gwilda's show? I think she's crazy. But the day, it will happen that this idea comes to you, this question you've been wondering about, the titles of my books, bing, that's how they come. That's how I got the title of my radio show. I fell asleep. I had a deadline to turn it into Unity FM the next day, and I didn't have, all my titles kind of So as I was falling asleep, knowing I was slipping into theta, I said, hey, boys and girls out there in the quantum field, I need a title of a radio show, so I'm going to sleep. Would you please come up with the title? As I'm waking in the morning, lying perfectly still, I heard as clearly as if someone were standing next to the bed, the soul-directed life. And Gwilda, probably a third of my guests stop me when I do my little introduction, and they say, oh, my God, I love the title of that radio show. And I just laugh because I didn't come up with it. Morning theta, morning theta, morning theta.
That is so beautifully stated. I have had your experience as well. That's where I write most of my books from, and the episodes, the beginning of the episodes for the radio program. It all comes from my sleep and that place in between waking and sleeping, and it is so valuable.
Yeah.
And if you train yourself, I've found, well, it's kind of natural for me. I enter into it and out of it periodically throughout the day. So when we come back, we're going to have to take another break, but when we come back, I'd really like to hear your advice on how we can move in and out of theta during the day and when it's advised and when it's not advisable to do. So we will return on the flip side of this break. Our guest this hour is Janet Conner, and she's the writer of the Soul Discovery Coloring Book and Find Your Soul's Purpose, two wonderful books from CONNER Press. We will be back on the flip side of this short break. You're listening to The Science of Magic, the place where altruistic professionals of science and the esoteric create common ground for the betterment of our world. You can always listen to previous broadcasts on our website, www.thescienceofmagic.net. We'll be back. Don't leave us. The scientist and the mystic have been on an age-old, relentless search with one thing in common. They seek truth. Their paths converge in the 40,000-year-old practice of shamanism, an ancient science delving to the quantum level of life, facilitating healing, manifestation, and evolution. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, the founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Arts School, a unique Colorado State certified occupational school training shamanic practitioners and teachers. We also provide classes for empowering personal lives through shamanism. Our certification classes are in week-long segments enabling international participation, and online classes and long-distance shamanic healing sessions are available. Come discover the science of magic in the limitless world of shamanism. www.findyourpathhome.com. Welcome back. This is The Science of Magic, bridging together gifted people of service to our world. Our website is www.thescienceofmagic.net. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. Our guest this hour is Janet Conner, author of many fine books, including the Soul Discovery Coloring Book and Find Your Soul's Purpose. Her website, www.janetconner.com. Janet, before we get too much further into this last segment, would you mind sharing with our listeners, where they can find to read your books?
Well, they are, as the saying goes, everywhere fine books are sold. So writing down your soul vows, the Lotus and the Lily, the Soul Discovery Coloring Book. I even created 2 journals for deep soul writers, my soul pages and my life pages. All of those are available at any retail or a brick-and-mortar store or, of course, online around the world. And you can always come to janetconner.com as kind of your launching pad to find them, but they are available everywhere around the world. And Find Your Soul's Purpose, that's the one she's in editing phase right now. She will be out March of 2017.
Great. Well, we'll have to do this again when that one comes out. So Janet, how do you see our day-to-day lives interfering with the ability to control our brainwaves?
Well, the big problem is beta, that all of our educational systems, all of our corporate systems are about measuring, judging, performing. And so you're in this this drive that comes from your solar plexus. I have to set a goal. I've got to achieve that goal. If I don't achieve that goal, I'm going to get fired. And you are in this high-pressure, high-performance, judgmental, this is good, this is bad, I can do this, I can't do this, beta brainwave state where you have no access to any new ideas. And so it's a real catch-22 that the only way there's going to be a Facebook or a Google or any new magnificent, very successful corporation is if somebody has a new idea.
Yeah,
and so what are corporations doing? They're bringing in trainers, expensive trainers, to try to teach creativity to their employees. When we untaught it starting in kindergarten. Right? The entire education system is, we got to teach them to read in kindergarten, and third graders are sick to their stomachs because they're terrified of not passing an exam. And so everything in our culture has been squeezing out creativity. And so here we are as adults, knowing we're hungry for joy, we're hungry for creativity, and we have to sort of retrain ourselves because our corporate systems, our educational systems are not going to do it for us. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because here we are. Here you and I are having this conversation. Here you are serving the world by reminding people this world is magic. This world is magic. The Creator created it as this astonishing, magnificent. You can't get your brain around how magnificent creation is. And so we get to play. You and me, we're playing in this sandbox of creativity.
What's so amazing about it is we are the magic. We are the facility through which it comes. We're the ones that bring it present in the world by entering into theta and then bridging it back to beta. Is that how you're viewing this?
Well, I myself probably, I wish I ran around with the little thingies on my head so that I knew what brainwaves I'm in. Here's how I view my life. I heard Marianne Rodmacher say this, and I took it immediately as the mantra of my life. She said, my work is my play, and my play is my work. Mm-hmm. And everything is prayer. I about came out of my skin when I heard her say that. And when I invited her to say it again when she was on one of my courses, one of my summer creativity courses, she said, what did I say? So she delivered, I think the universe said, here, say this to Janet, because Janet's going to take it as her life mantra. This is how I live. There is no separation. There is no separation. You couldn't walk into my writing office, which I call my writing chapel, and say, oh, now Janet is saying her prayers. Now she is doing her spiritual practice. Now she's in the mystical theta state. And now she's working. There's no separation. I see it as two overlapping circles. So if you saw one circle as your craft, for me it's writing. And here's the other circle, which is my spiritual practice. I grew up living that work is over here. Work is Monday through Friday. And okay, Sunday we're all going to go to church. These were two separate things. It's only when I got the contract to write this book for CONNER Press that I said, gee, I don't want these to be separate. And I slowly began to bring these two circles to overlap. Now, if you visualize two circles overlap, what do you have? You have that vesica piscis. You have that oval. This is where creativity lives. This is the divine playground. This is theta. This is breakthrough thinking. This is how you're going to make a wonderful living, creating something new and magnificent. This is the divine's fertile garden. And that's where I live. That's where I live. I think now my two circles are so overlapped that they're one and the same. My work is my play. My play is my work. And everything is prayer. It's a puja, to use yoga terminology. My life is a puja.
Yeah, living your life is a prayer, living a prayer. And that's what I observed in my teacher, and I've incorporated into world is I can stay in both states at once and just shift if I need to. Say I'm driving and I'm in theta, and all of a sudden something starts to happen in the road up ahead of me. I can shift back and forth pretty quickly right now. And I think that was our original design. I just think our educational system has trained us to not have that flexibility. And so that being the case, how can we help our children overcome this imbalance without interfering with their ability to work in the system?
Well, of course, parents are struggling with this mightily. I did not do a good job solving this problem for my own son, who is so brilliant and so clearly a self-educated learner. But I sent him to the very best schools, and, he one day said, Mom, and he was at the best school you could possibly find in the state of Florida. And he said, Mom, they're destroying my love of learning. And I regret that I didn't really hear him, and I didn't say, okay, we're leaving. So he made the decision. He said, I'm out of here. And he ended up getting a GED, and it probably saved his life. So if I had little ones, the most important thing is to hear them, read to them, give them all the art supplies you possibly can. Carefully, 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 carefully choose where you send them to school, because if they're shoving performance and tests down their throats in kindergarten, first and second grade, get them out of there. Teach them, honor their openness, because until the age of 7 or 8, the child naturally is living in theta. Read Bruce Lipton about how the growing child is, first they're in delta, they sleep all the time. The 1 to 6-year-old is a theta head. They're playing, they're talking to invisible friends, right? We're all Calvin and Hobbes, the most magnificent cartoon ever written, right? Every single one of us, when we were little, is Calvin talking to his stuffed tiger, who, of course, isn't a stuffed tiger, he's alive. But we squash that away from them. Hear it and help them have this conversation with their guides, with their angels, with loved ones that have crossed over, whatever languaging you want to give that, so that they honor and nourish this beautiful creative seed that they carried into this world.
Janet, thank you so much. Time has flown and we're out of it. Thank you for your wisdom and the wonderful things you've brought to the program. Our guest this hour has been Janet Conner, www.janetconner.com. This has been The Science of Magic. Remember, you can always listen to past thought-provoking episodes on our website, www.thescienceofmagic.net. Until next time, dear ones, may you be blessed with knowledge, comforted with love as you listen to your soul's song.